McKenzie.
Thank you. I rise today on behalf of the National Party to honour the memory of the 15 innocent Australians whose lives were lost and stolen in the Bondi Beach terrorist attack on Sunday the 14th of December 2025. This was the deadliest attack of terror on Australian soil and the first mass murder of Jewish Australians in our nation's history. This atrocity was not only an assault on individuals and families, it was an assault on faith, on the very idea of Australia as a safe home for Jewish people, a community that for generations had believed itself immune to the hatreds of Europe. Today, this parliament speaks their names. We speak of them with reverence and we speak of them with love. 15 lives we lost. Edith Brutman, 68, a pillar of the Sydney Jewish community, Vice President of B'nai B'rith, New South Wales Anti-Prejudice Committee, a woman who spent her life working to reduce hatred between people. Dan Erkelman, 27, a young French-Australian IT analyst and a promising footballer whose whole future lay in front of him. Boris Gurman, 69, and his wife, Sophia, a couple known for their warmth, generosity and courage. Witnesses said they acted instinctively to shield others when the shooting began. Alex Kleitman, 87, incomprehensibly a Holocaust survivor who rebuilt his life here in Australia as a civil engineer. Rabbi Yaakov Levitin, 39, Secretary of Sydney Beth Din, a scholar, a man of compassion, a father of young children. Peter Marr, 61, retired detective sergeant who'd given decades to public safety, was also a talented photographer, beloved by friends for his humility and his humour. Reuven Morrison, 62, businessman, husband and father. Marika Pogany, 82, born in Slovakia. Marika had devoted her life to community care and volunteer work. Matilda, the youngest victim, Ukrainian-born, an innocent child whose family fled another war. Rabbi Eli Schlanger, 41, assistant rabbi of Shabbat of Bondi and a corrective services chaplain who administered to some of our society's most forgotten people in our jails. I had the privilege of attending a packed service of Rabbi Eli's funeral in Bondi, a heart-wrenching event for a man whose loss has left an enormous chasm for thousands of people that he served, not to mention his incredibly young family. Adam Smythe, 50, a Bondi local, remembered for his kindness. Boris Tetleroit, 68, a visitor, a father, a man whose final act was protect his son. Tanya Tretiak, 68, a Randwick resident, mother and grandmother. Tibor Whiteson, 78, an automotive engineer and mentor to young tradesmen. He died shielding his wife from gunfire. 15 lives lost for what? So that Islamic extremists could send a message to the world? Their loss is a wound across our whole nation. This was a crime against Australia. It was motivated and perpetuated by Islamic extremism. The deliberate targeting of Jewish Australians at a peaceful public celebration. It was an inexplicable tragedy for families of the dead, but it is also a tragedy for our great country. The world already knew we had a problem with violent anti-Semitism because of what happened after October the 7th, 2023, on the steps of the Sydney Opera House over 2 years ago. 3 of Australia's most iconic, globally recognised locations, our most famous building, the Sydney Opera House, our most famous bridge, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and our most famous beach, all being used by Islamist propagandists to beam anti-Jewish hatred around the world, to say that we are even here on the shores of the most peaceful, diverse, celebrated diverse country in the world. and it was to tell the world that they are here and they will find their hate and their violence anywhere across the globe. And that is why when the news broke that Jewish Australians had been murdered at a Hanukkah celebration, the nation was shocked. But too many were not surprised. For 2 years, we had witnessed Jewish children under protection, under armed guard, attending schools in Australian suburbs in our capital cities, spat on, harassed on trams in Melbourne daily, unable to wear their own uniforms. That's Australian kids. We stood in this place and we spoke about it. We bore witness to that. Everyone heard it. If you didn't experience it personally, you knew it was happening. Jewish students harassed on Australian university campuses. Jewish lecturers shunned, their officers urinated on. In publicly funded university campuses. Jewish businesses targeted and boycotted violently, brutally. Jewish entertainers and the arts community silenced, doxed. You can't say that cohort of Australians are hard right-wingers. All of this was part of a rampant rise in anti-Semitism directed not only at the State of Israel, a Jewish state created as a home for Jewish people across the globe in the wake of what happened after World War II, but at Jewish Australians simply living out their daily lives. And a nation cannot and should not look the other way from hatred without inviting tragedy. It jars the present view of our nation, and we cannot look away from what's been happening. It's been easy to do that for a lot of people, to pretend it's not happening. It has been happening. We have been speaking about it. You cannot ignore it. Australia was meant to be safe. After the Second World War, Australia stepped forward. We opened our doors to Holocaust survivors and to Jews who sought a safe harbour. We supported the establishment of the State of Israel. Like my home city of Melbourne, Sydney's eastern suburbs became one of the great centres of Jewish life here in Australia, vibrant, proud and peaceful. The promise offered to Jewish Australians was simple and sacred. This is a country where you will be safe. And on the 14th of December 2025, that promise was broken. The Holocaust survivor killed that night, Alex Kleitman, was living proof of what that promise meant. He rebuilt after the worst horrors of humanity. He trusted our country, he trusted us. It is a stain on our national conscience. The day after the atrocity, I drove down to Melbourne to attend Caulfield Shul with a lot of colleagues. The synagogue was full, overflowing in fact, with families, with children, with grandparents, with people who'd not slept, who were grieving, exhausted and afraid, and yet they sang, they prayed, they lit the candles of Hanukkah, they stood together in defiance. The resilience of the Jewish people, always spoken of, was made very, very visible in that shul that night, because their forebearers have seen this before, and they know tragically that they'll see it again, but they refuse to be bowed or broken. They refuse to surrender their identity and their joy in that moment. They are an example to all of us who stand against evil. I walked home from the shul and was reminded that Jewish history is full of darkness but also of miraculous endurance. And I walked out with a deep conviction that it is up to us here in this parliament, in this peaceful corner of the earth, to ensure it doesn't happen again. The 15 Australians we mourn today were murdered because hatred was allowed to go unchecked. Silence, uncomfortable questions never answered. We honour them not only with our grief but with our resolve, and that's going to take courage. A lot of talk of kindness, but it has to have courage to face what we've been previously unprepared to face, because we might be called a racist, because we might be called mean, You cannot turn your face away from this. Resolve to restore that belief that Australia is a safe place to be Jewish, to worship freely, to raise your children without fear. 15 families and their community will never be the same. Their loss is bottomless. But from this place, the National Parliament, we must resolve to fight the scourge of anti-Semitism and Islamic extremism that has visited us. To the families of the dead, we will remember your loved ones. We will speak their names. We will honour their stories and we will fight the hatred that took them. We will not be silent. To be naive enough to think that there weren't homes in Australia that were celebrating what happened on Bondi Beach is to again fail to recognise the extent of the evil that we are dealing with. There will be homes in suburbs across our country who celebrated this terrorist attack that night, who continue to say it was a good thing. And I see senators shaking their heads at what I'm saying. Again, you fail to understand the significance, unless you are understanding the significance of what's happened and pretending it's not true. Of course, not every Muslim Australian is an Islamic extremism, far from it. And we should not let this become an attack on our Muslim community. But I can tell you and stand here and we need to be able to say that every single Islamic extremist is Muslim. And so we need to have a serious, upfront reckoning with how this happened, why it happened and who perpetuated it, where they are, without demonising law-abiding Muslim Australians who've sought also a better life here for them and their families and their future. We will also resolve never to forget. May the memories of Edith Brutman, Dan Elkiam, Boris and Sophia Gurman, Alexander Kleitman, Rabbi Yaakov Leviton, Peter Maher, Reuven Morrison, Marika Pogany, Matilda Horovich, Rabbi Eli Schlanger, Adam Smythe, Boris Tetraloit, Tanya Trekiak, Tibor Weitzman be a blessing. May their light, the light of courage, of kindness, of faith and of family, shine brighter than the darkness that tried to extinguish it.